Indeed a privilege to be presenting at this panel, and I'll be discussing a few cases. If I can, I'm unable to start the slideshow. So, can you see the next slide as well?
We can see.
Yes, ma'am. You could scroll it down.
You can, yeah. You just keep on going up. Probably that will work.
Okay. So the first case was a lady. Can you see this case one, Baggy and Rupi?
Yeah, we can see that, but we cannot see anything else. Okay, you go ahead. Let's see.
Can you scroll it, Aditi? Is it possible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, keep scrolling. Yeah, 4 minutes
Yes.
you have. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So the first lady actually presented with baggy and droopy eyelids, with the typical Asian eyelid without any crease, to the aesthetic clinic. So while examining her, we also noted that besides having upper lid blepharo and dermatochalasis and a droopy eyelid with mild ptosis, she also had hooded eyelids. So our decision was to go ahead for upper lid blepharoplasty with MMCR to address the ptosis. And we were at a dilemma as to what to do for the hooding of the eyelids. We had the options of doing an internal bropexy, an extended blepharoplasty, or a brassiere suture. So just a brief about the three. In the internal bropexy, what we do is that through the same eyelid incision for the blepharoplasty, we dissect in the pre-periosteal plane up to the lateral superior orbital rim. The idea is to address the lateral brow ptosis and the hooding. In this situation, we pass a suture incorporating the incision, the subincisional orbicularis muscle, repositioning the roof to the subbrow region at the periorbital rim, producing a lateral lift which addresses the hooding. The second option is extended blepharoplasty. As we all know, the conventional blepharoplasty incision involves a concentric shaped incision where the highest point, the highest width of the incision is at the mid-pupillary plane, and it's like shaped like a crescent. But when we want to include addressing the hooding, we intend to make the incision more decentered, in which case we extend the incision laterally till the lateral canthus, and then giving a sharp angulation of 15 degrees, we take it upwards till the lateral edge of the eyebrow. In this situation now, the incision actually resembles a scalpel blade, and the idea is to have the maximum width of the incision in the subbrow region in the lateral 1/3. This will address the extra lid in the lateral part and also address the hooding. The third option is a brassiere suture, which was actually described as the brow fat pad suspension suture as early as 1997. In this, we pass the suture from the arcus marginalis, incorporating the inferior cutage of the orbicularis along with the superior cutage of the orbicularis in a buried knot fashion. About 3 to 4 sutures are passed, and all of these are to be kept lateral to the orbital, to the lateral limbus, as they would produce lagophthalmos if they extended too medially. These help in producing a very nice lateral lift and to give a good contour with the deep sulcus and address the hooding at the same time. So in our case, we went ahead with the brassiere suture and achieved good patient satisfaction as well as surgeon satisfaction. The question for the panel was, what is their choice for addressing hooded eyelids? I'll quickly discuss the remaining cases as well. The second was a rare allergy, and this patient came for an upper eyelid blepharoplasty, and we did the LPS plication sutures with the crease-forming sutures with the absorbable polyglactin vicryl, and the skin closure was done with polypropylene. At the end of the surgery, she was looking good, and then when she presented next day, things were fine. However, when she came at the 1-week follow-up, there was significant erythema, and actually we realized that this might be an allergic reaction. We did the early suture removal of the polypropylene, but we couldn't remove the polyglactin, and we started her on topical steroid ointments with rapid resolution of symptoms, and at 2 months, she was absolutely symptom-free. And we attributed this to the polypropylene allergy, which is actually very rare, and only 6 cases have been reported in literature. It's supposed to be a T-cell mediated delayed hypersensitivity reaction. And the best way out is to do a skin patch testing when you're suspecting this by just passing the suture through a skin area and observing 48 hours later. The second patient came for a non-surgical rejuvenation.
Time is up.
Okay, so this patient actually came for a facial rejuvenation, and she was doing fine till about 6 weeks after the fillers, under eye fillers. She complained of a lumpy, bumpy appearance. And we decided to give her Hyalase. And post Hyalase, there was actually significant periorbital edema which worsened over the next 72 hours. She was started on steroids and they were continued for about 4 weeks, after which the filler had obviously gone away with the Hyalase, but she had developed mild steroid facies. In her case, the interesting timeline is that the area of the swelling was limited
You
to
might
the
have
area.
to wrap up. I'm really, really sorry to interrupt. Please wrap it up. Yeah, quick.
All right, ma'am. So this patient, we were just wondering whether the mask is rubbing onto the tear trough area and causing an allergic reaction or a lumpy, bumpy appearance. And the second was the allergy to the Hyalase. The third was a 360-degree xanthelasma. The lady had xanthelasma in the...
Aditi, your time is up, Aditi. Your time is
Yes,
up.
this is the last case, ma'am.
Yeah.
So this was a 360-degree xanthelasma in which we did an upper lid blepharoplasty and excised the xanthelasma and used the skin harvested from the blepharoplasty to repair the xanthelasma defect with a good contour and an auto skin graft from the same patient of the same eyelid. So the question for the panel is how to manage the 360-degree xanthelasma. So these are my questions for the panel.
Thank you, Aditi, for those interesting cases. Now, let me ask Feroz, how much time do we have? Because she's asked 3 questions to the panel. So maybe quickly we can ask the experts what their opinion is about these cases.
One question maybe, Adit, because we need to discuss the orbit session people also.
So sure. So let's talk about these xanthelasma. So very often we see 4 eyelid xanthelasmas in our practice. So how does one approach them? Do you try more conservative measures first, or you go ahead directly with a surgical excision, especially for xanthelasmas as seen in this picture? So I would like the opinion of the panel as well as our chairperson, Dr. Poonam Jain, on this.
I cannot see the xanthelasma picture here. Can you show that again? Because there is some problem with this. Yeah. Okay.
Is it seen now, ma'am?
Yeah.
Yes, I can see that. See, the lower lid xanthelasmas, which are very much flush with the skin and they're not much raised and they are so extensive, I generally try to do it with a radio frequency. Just a superficial abrasion, and sometimes I have had to do it a couple of times. But in older patients where there is more lax skin, I would go ahead and excise them surgically and then pass the sutures, and they perform very well. There has been only one case where I have done skin grafting after blepharoplasty, and that is again for the upper lid xanthelasmas. But yes, these xanthelasmas can prove to be very tricky, and those at the lateral angle of the eye that are often again seen, they also perform well with surgical excision. It's the central lower lid ones which pose a problem.
Dr. Shilpa, Dr. Preeti, your comment on this?
Yeah, same. So actually these xanthelasmas, this type which are seen in this picture, are difficult to manage, which are flushed with the skin and not raised. Patients who have malar festoons along with xanthelasmas at the lateral end are easily managed with excision of the skin. So I usually don't touch these types of xanthelasmas.
Good evening, everybody. I have a question. Hi, Kasturi. From where did she take a graft?
So Dr. Kasturi would be the best.
Because you're saying it's 360 degrees. So where was the healthy skin to take the graft?
If you can wait, let me show here. I am using my annotate. Can you see here? I'm drawing here. This is the xanthelasma here. Can you see I'm drawing from my side?
No, we cannot see you.
Yes, we can see, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm drawing. This is what this is xanthelasma. This is little hooded, but there was a big xanthelasma here below also. And so we had basically all this area of xanthelasma, and this lady, like, she happens to be in the media. And she had done somewhere else some cautery, and someone had also done a radio frequency earlier. That is from the history that she told us. So what I have done, I had basically done an upper eyelid blepharoplasty, and this part of the skin, this one I have not used any graft, but this part of the skin, I had also removed this and I have used it as a graft out here. And there was initial early slight change in the color, but later I had also injected little amount of tricord and 5-FU. Ultimately, the color also matched well. So I feel that in such situation, when you have real big xanthelasmas, if you really excise it, it leads to too much of lower lid retraction. So whatever skin possible, and the skin should be only skin. It should not be any subcutaneous tissue, or there should not be any fat in it. And I don't know whether you'll agree to me. I feel the xanthelasmas, they really penetrate deep into the muscle. Like it, I have never seen only xanthelasma involving the skin. Every xanthelasma penetrates up to the even deeper than the orbicularis. So you need to excise this big slot, and then whatever skin is remaining from here, I have given the graft here, and this gave a comparatively good color match. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Kasturi. Because xanthelasmas, one other thing is they are very, very, very vascular. They can bleed. I have gone back in the middle of the night to do cautery and resuturing. So I think that's another important point to be kept in mind for xanthelasma. That's a nice case. Thank you.
This is really a challenging case, but ultimately, okay, she had a good match. There was no much difference in the color of the skin after 3 months. And very interesting, this proline was used and also had some reaction.
Okay, yes, we are getting
Yeah.
kind of very often that we need to pass on the mic to the orbit.